G'day guys and welcome, my name is Michael and I am the DeadAussieGamer, here to share with you my tips, tricks, ideas and strategies for playing and running tabletop role-playing games. Now, today's video we are going to be discussing how to create a master plot. Well, at least how I create a master plot. Now, first of all, let me start by saying this. There are so many different types of games. You've got sandbox games, you've got linear games, some people use a 3-act system, some people use a 5-act system, some people don't even know what I'm talking about. No matter what type of game you're in, a master plot is the narrative story that lies at the foundation of your adventure. It is the thing that brings all the stories together and gives your players something to do. Whether this master plot is 3 games long or even just a one-shot, it doesn't matter. All it is it brings everything into one big head and reveals an ongoing story that your players are progressing through. Now, with that being said, this is the technique that I use when designing a master plot from behind the GM screen. The first thing you need is a good origin. What is the beginning of your master plot? Now, a lot of people say that, well, usually you want to come up with a premise. That's a great start. Let's say we want to explore a theme, like let's explore the theme of the fallen paladin. So let's write a story that's geared towards that. And of course, any good story about it is going to start with the paladin. Who is this paladin? What do they do? Why have they fallen? Through asking questions of the origin, to act as if you are sitting in as an audience member watching this tale unfold, you get to ask those questions and build and develop what is essentially the start of your master plot, the history that the players will uncover, hopefully, through the course of the game. So using this example, let us say that we have Sir Galahad, mostly because I'm unoriginal and that is the first name I've thought of. So Sir Galahad, member of the Knights of the Round Table, is going to fall. Now, what would make something, this knight of purity and Arthurian legend, what would make him fall? Well, what if, after the legend of King Arthur, and after the kingdom had gone and moved on, he became an old man, a person who left his own legend, who came up with a fabricated story, but instead decided to settle with a wife and with a child? But then an evil villain figures out where he is, figures out that one of the greatest knights of the realms still lives. But in order to secure his power, to secure what he needed to make sure that that old warhorse remained gone. So he sends assassins out, murders the wife. The paladin, conflicted, rushes to go and confront his villain, only to find that the villain itself is the church. The ones who he had sworn fealty to, the ones who he unequivocally had faith in. He casts aside his beliefs, he casts aside his feelings and becomes a villain, vowing vengeance upon the people who are responsible for taking away his happiness. We now have an origin. We then look at stage 2, the setting conflict. The setting conflict reflects upon the master plot's impact upon your narrative story, the world around the players. The grandiose nature of this step is entirely up to you. It can be something that affects a person. It can be something that affects a kingdom. It can be something that affects the cosmos. Whatever it is, the setting needs to be at some measure of consequence to what's happening in the plot. In the story of this evil Galahad alternate universe story, Galahad is raising an army to strike out against the church. In, of course, an England-like setting, that is unacceptable. So having a hero become a symbol against a government obviously incites rebellion, it incites conflict, disarrest, and so of course you'd imagine that the kingdom would in turn respond quite strongly to that kind of presence. Enter the setting conflict. A war will break out because a hero has stood against the opposing government. The setting conflict is super important because it also means that as the story develops, your world develops, your world builds. As your players go and solve these various challenges and plots and obstacles that you will inevitably throw against them, the setting is built and developed. As it then develops, it then feeds into the master plot, and the master plot then grows as well. You hear about a small turnip farm that heard about Sir Galahad's thing. Cool, we now know about the farm. The farmers decided to revolt. They've joined Galahad's army. To set an example, the kingdom sets fire to that village. The members, the farmers who had joined his army, are now fervently and fanatically devoted to Galahad's cause, and the players can now witness the evil of the government and what they're willing to do to stop this rebellion. You've built the setting. You've grown it. This can happen before or during a game. Next up is player conflict. Now, this is super important because if you have any master plot, it is going to be completely glossed over if the players don't have an investment into it. Meaning that there has to be some point in which the players come into conflict with that master plot so that you can manipulate them. Whether that is the group comes across Sir Galahad's army stealing from travelers on the road to try and fund their movement against the government, or whether the evil government has taken hold of the players and told them about this rampaging warlord. No matter what circumstance you throw at it, the player conflict is what is the buy-in. It's what hooks your players into that story. My biggest, suggestion here is if you do have a player hook, make sure that it hooks as many people as you can. Some players are hooked by money. That's not a conflict because as soon as the money's gone, there is no more conflict. If the players, however, had a home village, and the home village was now coming under pressure by the government in the form of, say, conscription, and young men and women who were being enlisted into the army, you might see the players becoming invested. You could also see that one of the players has a reputation, and that reputation has earned them the ire of one of these factions. Again, conflict with the player. So that is where you want to start out with your master plot. Next up is your checkpoints. Now, a lot of people like to write great stories and plan it out almost like they're writing a novella. This is fantastic, and if that is your writing style, I highly recommend that you don't follow what I do, because I don't. I'm very improv based. That being said, I don't just show up with no idea of what I'm going to do. Instead, what I put down checkpoints. No matter what I do, no matter how I twist the story, no matter what the players decide to do, I have 3 types of checkpoints. The first is my immovable checkpoint. These are things and points that the group will come to come hell or high water. In this particular case, between the Galahad army and the government, let's say that we put down an immovable checkpoint. There is a battle on a long-forgotten hill. This was where the fairy queen was slain by King Arthur, and Galahad was pivotal in that battle. There is a recreation of that battle, in a way, with Galahad fighting against an enemy force of the government. So, how do they get there? Well, maybe the group goes and speaks with Galahad, and they're joining them, riding against the government. Again, maybe the government has hired them and said, cool, we're going to set up an ambush at this place. I need you to lead my soldiers in an ambush against Galahad's forces. Fantastic. No matter how we've gotten about it, we've hit the immovable point. The second category is what I like to call the bending point. Now, the bending point is rigid in a certain way, but it allows you to sway. For example, if you join the evil forces, let's say the government is evil in this story, and you have been hired to go and set up an ambush. Now, your characters might not be okay with that ambush. They might not be, all in favor of this. And the government might be very insistent, like, no, you must go and ambush them. However, the group might then go, okay, maybe what we need to be able to do is try and negotiate. So this conflict, resolving the ambush, becomes a bendy point because the group still kind of has options on how they resolve this problem or how they even reach this point. As long as they get to the battlefield, as long as that war kind of happens, the immovable rod, it doesn't really matter where the bend goes. The third type is really kind of the loose checkpoint. These checkpoints I really use more in a game sense, like during a game. They are checkpoints that are there which I write down for my notes, which usually go beginning, middle, end. How am I going to start my adventure to get everyone excited? How am I going to encourage the growth of either the setting conflict, the player conflict, or the major plot? And then how am I going to finish my session? Am I going to finish with a cliffhanger? Am I going to finish with a big epic finale? Or am I going to have to quit and stop my game halfway through a battle? This is a moving checkpoint because it doesn't always work. You start a game and you're like, cool, everyone's going to be super excited. I'm going to have a summoner come up and create this huge elemental of fire and lightning, and it's going to be awesome and epic. And one of the spellcasters goes, alter summon monster. It's a bunny rabbit now. Well, that checkpoint it's a loose checkpoint. You don't need to worry about it. It will just keep pressing on. But as long as when you prep for a game, you have your loose checkpoints in hand, when you plan for your master plot kind of, the journey to the immovable plot points, you have your bendy plot points, or bendy checkpoints, then you're fine. You are fine. Second lastly, don't get ahead of yourself, Michael. The downfall. Now, every good master plot needs to have a point where the villain kicks up just before the final battle, or just before the end of your master plot. The reason for this is because as human beings, we love and crave a sense of achievement. The downfall, by having the players lose at some point during the plot, means that they need to pick themselves up, rally, and then overcome. The sense of success that you get from that is far greater than if you had just succeeded the whole way around. So planning a good downfall is an essential part of any great master plot. Here are my recommendations for that. You do not need to beat your players to a pulp with a combat. A downfall could be A, having your players achieve a goal but still lose in the major sense. By this, it could be your players have warned Galahad of the imposing ambush. You did not feel right sending people off to slaughter. You have successfully done so secretly and not been caught by the government. You now work on behalf of Galahad, trying to do what's right, but you are still inside the enemy army, which allows you to be able to manipulate the scenario and perhaps spare Galahad his horrible fate. However, through no circumstance of your own, Galahad does not heed your warning. He instead embraces it, deciding to die a martyr. Now, even though you've succeeded, even though you made all the checks to overcome the guards, even though you found and trained a raven, you sent the message off, somebody found you and you chased them down and stopped them from warning the king and alerting your presence as a spy to the kingdom, you may have done all of that stuff. But there's still the downfall. Galahad perishes in the battle. This is very touch and go because some players don't respond well to it. But as long as you present the opportunity for the players to then redeem themselves, you're generally okay. The second type is obviously just a clean sweep show of power, and I hate doing this because for me, it's just an ego thing. It's like the GM has so much power. They have omnipotent power in a role-playing game. Beating a group down in combat just never feels right for me. Like just going, yep, cool, you're all on low hit points. And what bugs me even more is if you do it and you happen to always ask, so how many hit points are you on? Oh yeah, so how many hit points are you on? Oh, just a quick check. How many hit points everyone on? Do you have any healing spells? No. Because that's when the battle isn't really about what you roll, or you can't overcome it because the players realize you're just waiting for our hit points to run down. And I want to pose this logic to you. If you play like that, or if you GM like that, the fastest way for your players to overcome the encounter is literally to start killing themselves. So just want to put that out there. That's a thing. It's not like it doesn't have a place. I just don't like using it myself. That's my opinion. Do as you will. So again, the players succeed but still fail in the major scheme. The players are beaten down by a clearly superior adversary. And the last one that I really enjoy, actually, this one's very, very subtle, is that the players fail, but their failure isn't recognized. So let's take the Galahad missive thing. Let's say that they send the Raven out, but the problem is that they did not secure the guards on the border. And as they watch the Raven fly out towards Galahad's army, an archer shoots down the crow. They have no other opportunity. That's simply it. Now, they haven't given away who they are or that they're spies, and the archer, shot it because he thought it was a illegal missive, which, fair enough. But the story continues, and the group then needs to hide in plain sight while concealing the fact that they had failed. It becomes a very internal struggle, and again, a great method of downfalling if you can finesse it. Last but not least, the last and most essential piece of making a master plot is the finale. The finale needs to be something that sets up 3 resolving factors. Number 1, revisit your origin. What started everything? It needs to come full circle. So this betrayal of Galahad, maybe the church betrays our party and they turn out to be the big villain at the end. Or maybe Galahad, despite everything, despite being, sort of shown that there is good in the world and that there is hope, failed to overcome his own grief and engages the group. The setting conflict. Revisit the setting conflict. The higher the stakes in the setting conflict in the final moment, the more, I suppose, epic your game will be. And it doesn't have to be epic. I want to point that out. If you are trying to protect the kingdom, fantastic. You're fighting for the crown. And if the crown gets deposed, then we have a new rulership. If Galahad gets deposed, then the people in kingdom lose hope and lose faith in one of their heroes. If you're looking at the cosmic scale, then it's like, well, the world will be destroyed if you don't do something. It depends on the setting conflict. It's a great thing, but revisit it in the finale. Player investment. Now, if the players have the investment, if the players, Galahad, you don't realize this, but I am your son from the future. And this is the moment where everything falls apart. Your name is dishonored and disgraced forever, and I'm here to stop you. And, whatever player investment you have, this is now the moment to resolve that, to get to that point where they can tie a bow over this story and look at the next portion of their life. The finale should be something awesome. It should be something memorable. Don't drag it out into a big hit point battle. Do something cool, right? Make the story and the combat almost succinct in a way. Have it turn into something like a pace. Like every 3 rounds, a new bit of story or a new bit of narrative progresses and shifts the tide of battle. It moves forward ever so slightly while at the same time allowing your players to engage in that final, epic, drawn-out moment. Let's say, for example, Galahad had finally made it to the kingdom. He survived the ambush and is now confronting his enemy, the Hierophant of the church. The Hierophant has an army of paladins. Galahad has the farmers and peasants at his side who are trying to hold off the paladins, who are trained soldiers and heavily armed. The PCs caught in the middle, deciding who to fight for. Decide that Galahad is right. The kingdom is in fact evil. They have betrayed Galahad and they've acted in a heinous sort of way. They fight with the farmers and they battle. We start with a battle with the paladins to try and save the what few farmers we can. We realize that not all the paladins are on board. We rally them. They begin to move forward. We now have command of a small army who go out against the Hierophant. But the Hierophant has other minions at his beck and call, because it turns out, bum bum bum, he was a devil in disguise, and devils rise from the pits of hell and battle with the paladins and the farmers. The PCs watch as Galahad is holding off the sorcerer, the demon devil infernalis? Diabolus, that's the one. Holding off the Diabolus at bay. Flames lick up. The PCs are killing off these demons. Suddenly, the buildings begins to collapse as the whole temple begins to sink into hell itself. And as it does so, Galahad is beaten. thrown back and rendered powerless to defend. The PCs now have to battle with the sorcerer themselves. You see how the story progresses during that final battle, during that final story. So if you get that for your finale, then I think that's going to be the easiest way to make a fun, epic, and memorable finale for your master plot. Alright guys, I'm sorry this is a bit waffly. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, of course, as always, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Go check us out on all of our social media. The links will be in the description below. And of course, if you want to support us as the Dead Aussie Gamer, then head on over to our Patreon page where you can join up with either our $1 or $2 coffee thing goblin, where you can, keep me alive for a little longer. And of course, if you want to, you can join our Mythic Patreon tier, because we have a couple of games that we are running, and there are some brand new seats opened up for those tables as well. So if you do, please do check that out. Until next time, guys, as always, game hard or die trying. Bye!